and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're all doing very, very well. And settle in, because it's my May wrap-up where I talk about all the books that I've read in the month of May. 16 books I read in May. Well done me, that's a lot for me. Normally I'm around a sort of 12, 13 girl. Sometimes even less. But yeah. 16 books is amazing. I'm going to start with the audiobooks because otherwise I completely forget about them. The first audiobook that I read this month was Jog On, How Running Saved My Life by Bella Mackie. Now I listened to this because I have been running, you may well know. I've been following the Couch to 5K programme, which starts you off from literally doing no running to being able to run for 30 minutes or a 5K, which I completed in the week. Yay, well done me. And very pleased about that. And I wanted to read some sort of like running non-fiction, and this caught my eye. I bought it for my friend Emma, I think, or maybe it was David's sister we bought it for. We definitely bought it for somebody for Christmas, not last year, the year before. That person was into running. I think it might have been David's sister, and we wanted to get them a book about running, so I bought that. So I was aware of the book anyway, and listened to it. It's narrated by Bella Mackie herself, and what I didn't realise is that it was much more about her mental health rather than about her relationship with jogging. I thought it'd sort of be tips and tricks of how to sort of pick up running from a beginner's perspective, because Bella talks about how the fact she'd never run before, etc. But it's much more about her relationship with her mental health, and I have to be very careful when I read books that feature mental health, because I have mental health problems. I've suffered from anxiety, and I have to be really careful when I read things like that. And I think maybe if I'd have known that going in, I probably wouldn't have gone for that book. But I feel like it was dealt with in a really sensitive way, particularly as some of her mental health problems are quite extreme, and she has been battling with mental health for a long time. So I thought it was okay. It didn't do what I wanted it to do, but even so, it still sort of provided a bit of like context for me. And I definitely know that my mental health is better when I've been exercising. So the main message was that, and I already knew that. So yeah, so it's not Bella's fault, but yeah, it wasn't the book I thought it was going to be. I think I ended up giving it 2 stars, maybe 3, who knows. The next one was The Body in the Library, which is an Agatha Christie book. It's in the Miss Marple series. I've got this sort of situation going on with Agatha Christie books. I've read one twice and absolutely loved it, and that was And Then There Were None. Now I've actually physically read that with my eyes, and gave that 4 stars both times, thinking it's so clever, so like even the second time round when I was reading it again, and it's one of the books I've read this month, I still, and even though knowing who had done it, I still was like, oh, who's done this? I don't know. I love that book, and that is a book that I have read with my eyes. Now, the other Agatha Christie's I've come across, this one, The Body in the Library, Murder on the Orient Express, and a Christmas one, which I can't really remember. I've listened to the audiobook of all of those, and none of them have fared very well. This one I gave 2 stars, but the other 2, Murder on the Orient Express and the Christmassy one, I gave 1 star. And I wonder if it's because, well, first of all of those 3, the difference between all of those 3 and Then There Were None was that And Then There Were None has no sort of central investigating figure, which I really loved in the book, the fact that they're all sort of looking into it and things like that. And the other 3 that I've read and gave lower stars did. So that's number 1. I think maybe I'm more of a standalone girl in terms of following an investigator. And number 2 is that I listen to those on audio, and I think in all of what I've noticed from all of the Agatha Christie books I've read is that there's a hell of a lot of characters, and some of them are quite similar. And I think maybe when I'm listening to them on audiobook, I'm not taking it in as much as I should be. Now, this one was slightly better than the other 2 I'd read. I did give it 2 stars, but yeah, I think maybe just because I loved And Then There Were None so much, I really want to love more Agatha Christie, but none of them at the moment are standing up to the point of And Then There Were None and how much I loved them. So yeah, I gave 2 stars to The Body in the Library. The next audiobook I listened to was How to Be Famous by Caitlin Moran. This is for an online book club I have with my pals. We've started taking it in turns to run this online book club, and this was a pick of another member of the book club. Caitlin Moran's writing, I don't know, I feel weird about it, because what I'm going to say now is really like, what's the word when you're, my mum would say, well, that's rich coming from you. What do I mean? But anyway, I find Caitlin Moran quite shouty, and I know that I am a shouty person, so it feels a bit naughty for me to say that, but yeah, I find her a bit shouty. And yeah, this book, How to Be Famous, I've previously read a book by her called How to Build a Girl, and this book felt like it was that book. So since I've mentioned it, I reviewed it on my Instagram, and a few people said, oh, it does follow the same set of characters, but it literally feels like the same storyline. So that wasn't like the best for me. I didn't love that about it. But what I will say, that the things that I did enjoy about it was that there was quite a lot of sort of like girl power in there, which I enjoyed. But also there was a lot of like very graphic sex scenes, which were completely gratifying towards the woman, which is something that you don't really read about, or in my case hear about, in books. So I appreciated that. So it was a 2-star throughout, and then I feel like that sort of clawed it up to a 2.5 star. But yeah, her main character, I think this has been made into an adaptation as well, with Beanie Feldstein as the main character of Joanna. And forever, like the whole way through the book, she's referring to herself as, oh, this fat teenager, oh, this fat teenager, this fat teenager. In some ways, I myself try to celebrate the word fat. I am a fat person. But it didn't feel like that in the book. It didn't feel like the way she was describing the main character and people seeing her as a fat teenager. It felt like a slur rather than something to be celebrated. So yeah, 2.5 in the end, but yeah, I didn't love it. And then the last audiobook I listened to was The Switch by Beth O'Leary, and this is a women's contemporary fiction book, which I wouldn't ordinarily listen to. It's not one of my favourite genres, but it was narrated by Daisy Edgar-Jones, aka Marianne from Normal People, and Pamela Stedman, aka Pamela from Gavin and Stacey. So I was like, oh, I have to listen to that. And I actually really enjoyed it. It was about a grandmother and a granddaughter relationship. One lives in central London, and one lives up north, and they swap lives for a bit, and the circumstances surrounding this, you have to sort of like take a bit of a creative license with, because it's just like, in what world would you be told you've got to take 2 months off your job, and you're going to swap lives with your grandmother, including your mobile phones and all of this? Like, I mean, when realistically is that going to happen? But I did enjoy it. I really enjoyed the grandmother-granddaughter relationship. It was very, very cute. There's still sort of like women's contemporary fiction tropes that I do not enjoy that featured in this book, which is why it couldn't score more than a 3-star from me. For example, like, all the problems are solved when you get a man, and there's things coming which literally, like, there was, so for example, when she goes up to her old hometown and stays in her grandmother's house, there's somebody there who she hasn't seen since school, and blah blah blah, and you think, he's basically got a big flashing light above his head saying she's gonna shag him later. Like, I find them quite predictable, but yeah, I can't say that I didn't enjoy it though, because I did enjoy it. So those are the 4 audiobooks I listened to. Let's move on to the actual books. The first book I read of the month was Your House Will Pay by Steph Char. This is the proof copy. This is a book set in 1990s LA, at the time of riots and sort of the Black Lives Matter movement, etc, etc. And this is, you're following sort of decades of anxiety, decades of angst and things, and tension between 2 families, the Parks and the Matthewses. Now the Parks, you find out, also, I didn't know much about this book going in, and the way it unfolded to me unfolded really beautifully and at the exact right speed that the story needed to, so I very much appreciated that. But what basically happens is that the Parks family owned a shop, and one of the members of the Matthews family, a young girl, comes into the shop. She is a black girl, comes into the shop, and the woman working behind the counter believes that she is going to steal from her, and ends up fucking shooting her, which is just abysmal. And then then you follow sort of like the trial of what was happening then and what's happening now, and then action happens in this. I really can't tell you what happens without revealing what happens, but it was told from like the alternating chapters of one chapter from the Matthews family point of view, so someone from the Matthews family, and then another chapter from the Parks point of view. And it really moved along really quickly, and I really appreciated this and the tension involved in it and the building of the tension. And I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was really, really great, so would definitely recommend. Next up, we've got Aurebel by Laura Dockrell. Now, I read Lorelei for the Owls readathon, because I had to read a book which was set at the sea, and this was the second book. I'd read Lorelei before and enjoyed it, but really, really loved it when I read it this this time round this year. And this is the sequel, which I'd never read before, and follows the same sort of characters, Lorelei, etc. But there's also this new character, Aurabel, and this goes into a bit more of sort of like, well, like mermaid politics basically, which I really enjoyed, and sort of assesses some of the class divides between classes living in the mermaid world, and also revisit some of our friends and characters that we've known from living on the in Hastings, which is a coastal town quite close to where we live, where we've been a few times. Really enjoyed it, gave it 3 stars. Didn't enjoy it as much as Lorelei, but thought it was a great follow-on, and I really enjoyed the new character of it. So yeah, enjoyed. The next one I read was A Sweet Sorrow by David Nicholls. Now I got this for Christmas off my friend Emma, and I've been looking forward to reading it, and I'd been sort of putting it off because it's set over a summer. It follows a theatre group as they're putting on a production of Romeo and Juliet over the summer. Now, another reason I was drawn to this is that recently I've seen quite a lot of lists of books going around of, if you like normal people, then you'll probably like this, and this appeared on that list, as did another book in this wrap-up. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's obviously not exactly like normal people, but you'll follow a young lad whose name I've bloody forgotten, Charlie, who's just finished school. His home life isn't great. His mum and dad are separated. He lives with his mum, and he lives with his dad, and his dad's clearly got some sort of addiction and mental health problems. He stumbles upon a theatre youth group, and one of the girls there he fancies, and she says, oh, you can take me out for a drink if you sign up for this theatre youth group. And he does, and he actually surprises himself how much he enjoys it. And I really enjoyed the bits where him and the girl that he has an interest in, whose name I've forgotten, Fran, they're studying the Romeo and Juliet text together, and she's sort of like running through his part and saying, oh, this is what this means, and what do you think this means, and how should this be acted out. And it really reminded me of like studying Shakespeare when I was younger than Charlie, and just being like, oh, for fuck's sake, why can't they just say what they mean? Like, I was exactly Charlie's feelings about it was how I felt when I was 13, I think I was, when I studied Romeo and Juliet. And yeah, I thought it was really, I really enjoyed it, and I feel like it touches upon, as I said, issues of addiction and mental health, and families in a really thorough way. And yeah, I gave it 4 stars, thought it was really great. So the next 5 books are books that I read for a little mini readathon that David and I did for 5 nights in May, called Book versus Film, where David watched the film of a book adaptation, and in the same time that it took him to watch the film, I would read the book. And I've done a wrap-up of these, so I'm not going to mention them, I'm literally going to show you the books, and you can go and check out that wrap-up down below if you'd like. The books are The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, Journey to the Centre of the Earth by Jules Verne, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, mentioned that a little bit, and then Matilda by Roald Dahl. So as I said, there's a separate wrap up for those. Go and check that out if you want, because I don't need to be repeating myself here, do I? And then the next book is one of those books from the aforementioned list of, if you like normal people, you may well like this book, and that's Expectation by Anna Hope. I enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars as well. So this follows three friends, Hannah, Kate and Lissa, and part of it is set in Canterbury and Whitstable. Canterbury is where I went to university, and Whitstable is one of mine and David's fave places to visit. It's a coastal town. Keep talking about those coastal towns, don't I? And you're following their friendship, and I use friendship like this because some of the actions they take towards each other aren't the friendliest of actions. The book covers things such as infertility and trying for a baby, and post-natal depression, and yeah, there's just a lot of like, I like the tagline on here because I feel like it really sums it up well, and that's what happened to the women we were supposed to become. It's all about the expectations of what you think your life will turn out like. They all at one point live together in this flat in London, and one of them wants to be an actress, and another one's just met this bloke, and he ends up being, and you're following what was happening then compared to what was happening now. And like I said, although they're presented to us as friends, there's a lot of actions within this book that I didn't think were particularly friendly to one another. But yeah, I thought it was really great. I gave it 4 stars, and enjoyed it very much. The next up was a non-fiction book that I read, and that is The Stopping Places by Damien Labar. This is a journey through Gypsy Britain. So Damien Labar has Romany background. His grandparents were travellers, and his grandparents travellers, etc, etc. And this is him revisiting some of the stopping places the title of the book, that his family would have travelled about through the UK staying at, and he does this in his van. He's accompanied sometimes by his I think she's his fiancée, Candice, and they go all over. He goes all over the country, up to Scotland, Wales, around the south of England, going to these different places. And what I enjoyed about this is that this is sort of like the perfect non-fiction book written for me, really, because I enjoy following non-fiction books about journeys, and I enjoy it when the chapters are split up to parts of that journey, and I also enjoy it when within those chapters there like other stuff is explored. So for example, in one of the chapters where he goes to a place in the UK where they have a massive horse festival, he goes into the details of travellers' relationships with horses and why they've always been so important. I really enjoyed the nature writing in here as well. There's a lot of like him sort of pulling over and having to stay at the side of a road and things like that, and him talking about birds that are there and plants that are there. And I really also enjoyed the chapter about the caravans that they stay in and how they would pitch up and why they would stay there for so long. And if you saw a puddle of water under a caravan, you'd be really concerned because that should be bone dry and things like that. And yeah, I found it really insightful and really interesting about a topic that I didn't really know I had that much interest in, and I thought it was really great. So I would definitely recommend this. Then the next book I read was for my Patreon book club. We're going to be discussing this Sunday night. Looking forward to discussing it, and that's the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society. This is written by Mary-Anne Schaffer and Annie Burrows. This is a epistolary novel. Really always so proud of myself when I remember that word, which means it's a novel told through letters. So you are following Juliet, who is an author based in London. It's post-war, and somebody writes to her as they find a book that she, I think the book previously belonged to her. Someone writes to her from Guernsey, which is an island under British occupation just off of France, and it's just been released from German occupation at the time of this book, yeah, they're writing to them, and she grows very fond of the people that live on Guernsey and builds up a relationship with them and eventually goes to visit them. And yeah, it's just lovely. It's proper cozy. So the reason we picked this is that because we wanted like a cozy comforting read, and also because at the time where this was picked, not a lot of bookshops were open, and I wanted to pick a book that I thought maybe people would have or be able to get online for secondhand and things like this. And I'd forever seen this in secondhand bookshops, and people had mentioned that they owned it. So I think that's why we ended up picking this one. But I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to reading it. I feel like the title's really like already just sort of evokes comfort and coziness, and yeah, I really got involved with the characters and their relationships, and I found it funny. I found myself chuckling, and I found it a comfort and a joy to read. So yeah, really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. And then the last book, which I finished during Cozy Reading Night last night, was The Salt Path by Raina Wynn. Now I did a sort of like semi wrap up when I was talking about it on my live show last night, but I'll go into a little bit more detail here. So I gave this 2 stars. So the premise of this book, like I mentioned earlier, is just with the stopping places, was just something that I wanted to love, and I thought I was going to love it. I love following people on journeys, real life people going on journeys, particularly around the UK, and this is a book which follows Raina, who is the author of this book, and her husband Moth as they travel the southwest coast path in the UK. There's a couple of reasons why they're doing this. They have recently been made homeless. Now, one of my issues with this is that you don't really find out many details, and perhaps that's not like entirely like relevant to this story, but you don't find out many details about how they are homeless and how they become homeless, apart from the fact that it sounds as though Moth made a difficult an investment which didn't pay off, and they owed money, etc, and they end up losing their house, which is why they then are homeless. So also Moth has just been diagnosed with a terminal illness, so this is going to be a difficult journey for them. So all of that, I was like, my God, how interesting. What a thing to have to deal with, like being made homeless and getting a terminal illness and doing this like route. What a thing. Raina herself, I just found her so spiky and sort of antagonistic. Every interaction she had with anybody she met on the path, it's not even like just like a, answering in one-word answers and sort of relying on Moth to bring the charm and stuff, and her sort of like just settling back and just not really listening. And she talks forever about how old people are, and there's like some really bad fat slurs in there. And another thing that I mentioned this last night when I was in the live show, is that she talks about how loud people's voices are. Oh, I was on a bus and there was a really loud American woman. Oh, we're walking down the pub and we had these really loud Australian people. Oh, we did these really loud children. And I think, as someone, me, who's been told throughout their life that they're really, really loud, she didn't mean it in a positive way. She meant it like in a not very nice way. So this whole fantastical journey, which I thought was going to be filled with nature writing, and the parts of the nature writing that was there I really, really loved, mainly is her sort of like being a bit like just snarky towards people they found on there. Also, they haven't got any money. They've had to lose their house, and they get a little payout every week, some sort of benefit payout every week, and they spend it on like bonkers stuff, like fudge, and they're starving all the time, and they spend it on like fudge and wine gums and beers, like not all the time beers, but like I remember them saying, oh, they were just going to buy a couple of beers each and chips. And I think, why aren't you fueling yourself better for this journey? Also, your husband's bloody terminally ill. So yeah, there was a whole host of things that sort of mixed together. Now, I was nervous about my feelings about this book because I know that this is very well loved by people. I had not seen a bad review on it, so imagine my delight when I mentioned to Mercedes about it, and she had read it and also had not enjoyed it. And apparently she's got a review going up about it then. And if you think this review is probably a PG-13 review compared to how Mercedes' review is going to be. And then once I mentioned it in the live show, a few people said, oh, I actually found like that as well. So I was pleased that it wasn't just me that felt like that. So yeah, a lot of talk about one book that I ended up giving 2 stars, but that's how I feel about it. So those are the books that I read in the month of May. 16 books, imagine. What did you guys read in the month of May? Have you ever read any of these books? What are your thoughts? And I'll see you all again soon for another book tube video. Bye!